Welcome to the deep dive, and specifically our rugby obsession deep dive. Today, we're taking a really fascinating look into the high-stakes world of international rugby. We're focusing squarely on the Wallabies, as they gear up for that huge British and Irish Lions 2025 series. And our main source for this chat is a great piece by Brett McKay. It's titled Six Selection Questions for Joe Schmidt as Lions Loom Large.
That's right. And McKay's article is not just a list of names, is it? It's really about the strategic thinking of the Wallabies coach, Joe Schmidt. It gets into the massive challenges he's facing and those critical decisions that could really shape the whole series outcome. It's a proper deep dive into the kind of calculation, the thinking that goes into building a top team under, frankly, immense pressure.
Yeah, exactly. And just before we jump right into these questions, a quick reminder for you listening. If you love rugby, if you want more in-depth analysis like this, please do make sure you subscribe to Rugby Obsession. We're going to unpack some really interesting dilemmas here, and honestly, we'd love to hear what you think about them too. Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. We've just seen a lot of the Lions warm-up games. The Wallabies have had their one hit out. So the big question really is, how many answers does Joe Schmidt actually have right now for that first test? McKay suggests, well, maybe not that many. He breaks it down into 6 key areas.
And what's really striking is just how linked all these questions are. Schmidt isn't just, picking individuals in isolation. He's trying to craft this whole strategy, isn't he? Balancing experience, current form, fitness levels, team chemistry. It's a massive juggling act.
Okay, first up then, the front row. The article makes it pretty clear that tight head Alatoa seems like a near certainty for Brisbane. But after that, things get a bit murky.
Yeah, exactly. Loose head and hooker are much more up in the air. For the number 1 jersey, you've got Angus Bell. There are questions there about his readiness to start, tested this intensity, especially coming back from injury. And then you have James Slipper, Australia's most capped player, under 44 caps, massive experience, but he's 36. So can he consistently start through a really tough Lions series? That's the question mark.
And at hooker, it sounds like a bit of a race against time for a few guys.
It really does. Dave Parecki failed his HIA. He's in those return-to-play protocols, so he's missing crucial training time. Not ideal. Matt Fiesler's also had a season disrupted by injuries. And then there's the young guy, Billy Pollard. Promising, yes, but he's had some well-documented line-out throwing wobbles this season. McKay really emphasizes that whoever gets the nod, there's plenty of set-piece remedial work needed.
Yeah.
So the big question Schmidt has to weigh up is, who can actually perform under that intense white-hot pressure of a Lions test match, especially at scrum time and line-out? Maybe reliability trumps pure form here.
Right.
Staying with the forwards.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really interesting, I think. The whole discussion around pack balance, specifically with the 140-kilogram Will Skelton involved. The article suggests this question just always comes up when he's in the selection frame.
It does, and if you look at the bigger picture, Skelton's a player you can definitely build a pack around. He offers something unique. But his sheer size, his ballast, it means you have to make compromises elsewhere. Australia's back row stocks, they don't really have those hybrid players like, say, an Artie Savea or Peter Steph Tutois. So as McKay points out, Schmidt might need to pick a lock who can cover blindside, but doing that could impact your back row's dynamism, maybe make them a bit slower to the breakdown. Or the other option is putting Rob Valetini on a sort of line-out crash course. It kind of highlights the difference in player pools, doesn't it, compared to, say, the French top 14, where you see lots of those number 4, number 6 hybrid players. Okay, so moving slightly back in the pack to the back row itself. Some choices seem more subtle, don't they, like Rob Valetini and Fergie Wright. But there's a real focus in the article on Harry Wilson.
Yeah, Wilson seems to have really nailed down that num.8 spot now, especially after that very strong performance against Fiji where he scored the match-winning try. The article specifically notes he just continues to grow as skipper. That's a pretty big statement. And that performance, it seems to have quietened any talk about maybe Jake Gordon taking over the captaincy. Wilson looks secure there now. McKay also mentions Langi Gleeson faded quite badly against Fiji. And Pete Samu, well, he'd need an absolute stormer to get back into that starting conversation ahead of Wilson.
Now let's turn to what the source calls a major headache, and it really sounds like one. The fly half position. Some pretty unfortunate news about Noah Lolesio. What's the knock-on effect of that?
Oh, this is a big one, yeah. Lolesio looks like he's out of the series. He needed surgery for a whiplash injury, and that's his 3rd sort of worrying injury this year alone. The strategic problem here is huge because Schmidt had clearly backed Lolesio. He was the guy meant to execute Schmidt's specific game plan. So now, well, the whole plan needs a rethink. The article mentions the alternatives.
Tom Linnea, but he's had his own injury issues. Ben Donaldson, whose form kind of fell away towards the end of Super Rugby. It even throws out that slightly desperate-sounding question. Has anyone asked James O'Connor to maybe hold off packing his bags for Leicester? Which just shows you how tricky this situation is.
Wow, yeah. Okay, looking further back then, back three, the article brings up that classic rugby tension. How do you balance experience against that raw X factor, that flair? And it points out the Wallabies' back three against Fiji had only 49 caps between them, and Tom Wright had 38 of those.
Yeah, and what's insightful there is, okay, maybe that lack of experience wasn't the only reason they almost shelled that game, as McKay puts it. But it was pretty obvious the trio hadn't played much together, especially under that kind of test match heat. So the article strongly suggests bringing in someone like Andrew Kellaway or Marika Koroibete, guys who've been there, done that in high-pressure games. That could make a huge difference. Kellaway especially has that established combination with Wright at 14 and 15, which brings vital cohesion. The implication really is that for a series like the Lions, Schmidt's probably going to lean towards that reliability, that proven experience. Kellaway, Koroibete. Their composure might just be more valuable than raw instinct right now.
Which leads us perfectly into the final point, the bench. The article talks about this shift, doesn't it? It's not just about a bomb squad anymore. It's about having finishers, players who can genuinely change a game right at the death.
Exactly. It's a key strategic point. Does Schmidt have players he can really, truly trust on that bench? Trust to get the team into the right field position, find the winning play, maybe after, 25 phases, no penalty advantage, sirens gone. You know, Harry Wilson's 79th minute try against Fiji is mentioned as a definite positive sign there. But McKay also highlights that irony. Australian rugby wants shorter game times, but this massive series might actually hinge on winning moments well after the 80-minute mark. And historically, those late-game scenarios haven't always ended well for Wallabies fans, have they? So perhaps Schmidt's toughest bench decision is identifying who has the mental strength, the clarity under extreme fatigue and pressure to deliver when it matters most, potentially in that 81st or 84th minute.
That's a really great point about those crucial final minutes, or even beyond. It definitely makes you think, doesn't it? Given all these selection puzzles, the high stakes, what do you listening think? What are Joe Schmidt's absolute toughest calls? We genuinely love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, if you are enjoying this sort of deep dive into the tactics and selections, remember to hit subscribe for Rugby Obsession. That way you won't miss any of our future chats.
Well, what an incredibly detailed look into the Wallabies' selection headaches for this Lions series. It's just so clear that Joe Schmidt has some immensely complex, high-pressure calls to make right across the park. You know, from those front row uncertainties we talked about to the sudden fly half crisis and then that critical role of the finishers off the bench. Every single choice feels like it could swing the result.
Totally. And if you connect it to the bigger picture, like we said, these aren't just about picking player A over player B. They're fundamental strategic decisions. They'll define how the Wallabies approach playing against one of the toughest touring sides in world rugby. McKay's article really does lay out the sheer depth of the challenges and the kind of sharp, nuanced thinking needed at this elite level.
It's definitely going to be an absolutely captivating series to watch unfold, that's for sure. And please don't forget to subscribe to Rugby Obsession for more deep dives into the sport we all love. Thank you so much for listening to this Rugby Obsession deep dive, and we'll look forward to listening to our next episode.